God, grant me the serenity. So hi everyone, my name is Maggie and I'm a person in long-term recovery since February 6, 1992. And I want to first say thank you to Phil and his team for having me be here. I am so honored and grateful to be a part of this recovery movement. I want to give a shout out to two people who I worked with years ago, Herbert and Sarah. Are you here, Herbert and Sarah? Herbert B, yeah, and Sarah P. So I just wanted to say, hey, this is their first time being here, and this is a major thing. So Phil just said to me, I'm wondering what you're gonna say. You probably are too. So I went through this process, and I was thinking, it's been about 6 months since I found out I was going to be here speaking, and so I know that this is really about my pathway of recovery. And so my pathway has changed over time, and so this is really a story of becoming and hope. That's really what this is about for me. And so my date that I just gave you is poignant because of the fact that I started to talk about that I was going to get clean around November. It's like, well, all right. Then I go out, all right, I'll get clean. So my sister and I decided that, we would just go ahead and we would just stop using drugs. And then it was going to be Thanksgiving. I was like, fuck. Can't do it before Thanksgiving. And so then my sister's birthday is December 13th. I had a party for her birthday. Then there was Christmas, and my birthday is the 29th of December, and then there was New Year's. So that's how I ended up in February. Finally ended up someplace in treatment. And it wasn't me walking into treatment saying, listen, I want to get better. It was the criminal justice system. So Judge Bingham was my recovery capital. I didn't know it. I didn't think it was going to be that, right? And so I had gone back and forth to court, because I was arrested at least once a month for 18 years. At least once a month. And so my dad helped me with my pardon. So I was looking at this whole thing, and we were doing the application around that whole pardon piece. And I was shocked by how many times I'd been convicted. So I visited temporarily, but I had not been convicted that much. So I went to court this one particular time, and Judge Bingham said to me, here's what I want you to know. If you come back here again, I need you to wear a button-down shirt, and for every button that's on that shirt, I'm giving you a year. I was like, all right, I can do that. I won't come back. So I was supposed to be back in court the next month, so I didn't show up. Our public defender said, what happened? I said, Judge Bingham told me don't come back. So I didn't go back. And so that was really like that was the process of really my involvement with the criminal justice system. I never showed up for my court dates. And when they picked me up, and I went to Niantic, which is Connecticut's jail. I went to Niantic, and I never once thought, oh, maybe this is something I should try to learn, that every time I'm using drugs, I end up in jail, and maybe I should try not to end up in jail and stop using. Never was a thought. I went to jail, and what I thought about was, let me find out who's done something here that I haven't done, and then I could go back with that. So I was building recovery capital, right? So my mom gave me three or four messages, right? And she said to me, be kind to others and they'll be kind to you. She said, always pray. If you go to jail, don't call me because I'm not coming to get you. And don't do drugs. And always wear clean underwear in case you get in an accident, because they might need to get you on in an ambulance. And so, I listened to a few of those, but not all of them. But I still wear clean underwear. I didn't always do that, but I do it now. And I didn't call her when I went to jail. And I was there a lot. And my mom said to me, So my mom is going to be a really big part of what I talk to you about, because connection and family and my mom and her prayers, I believe, is what has me standing here today. So back and forth to jail, and then in 1992, I finally end up in a treatment facility. And I'm thinking, oh, okay, I'll go to treatment. They say that, I won't have to go to jail. So I end up in a treatment facility. I'm thinking in my head, here's what I'm going to do. I'll go to treatment because it's local. I won't have to ride the blue bus for 2 hours to get back to Stanford before I could use. And so I went to treatment. I was in treatment for 7 months. I stayed in treatment for 7 months, and I still had to go to jail. Well, what the fuck, right? So I go to jail, and I'm in jail, and 2 things happened to me that had not happened to me all the times I've been in jail. One was someone offered me a bag of dope, and I turned it down. Shocked, right? Because I'd never turned anything down. I typically left jail higher than I was when I was on the streets. And the other thing was, my bunkmate hung herself in the middle of the night. I didn't know that was trauma. I didn't know what was happening in my life, so I just started to scream. They moved me, and I stayed there, and then I came back out. And so I came back. When I came back to court, I was in court, and the judge said to me, "What are you going to do with your life?" And I said, "I don't know. You keep locking me up." So he said, "But you keep doing stuff." And I said, "But I haven't done anything in the last 6 months." He said, "Because you were locked up." So we went back and forth, and I had a public defender who walked up to me and looked in my eyes and said to me, "You deserve better. You deserve better." I was given an opportunity to go into the treatment facility, and my saving grace was I peed in a cup 3 places a week. So I couldn't figure out when I was going to be peeing, so that really is the thing that got me clean, right? Peeing in a cup, probation, parole, and treatment. And this was throughout my first 7 years. This was all back and forth and having to go into these treatment facilities and go in and pee in a cup, and thank God. And so I was introduced to then a young lady who had come into the treatment facility who said, "You need to get a sponsor." I'm like, all right. So I'm thinking to myself, I'm up late at night, right? And so the only thing I know about a sponsor is when they go across the thing and they say, "Sponsor a kid." So I'm thinking, oh, she's going to give me money. Right? Did not happen, right? And so I was then introduced to the 12-step program. And so against my will, I went because they said, if you don't go, you're not going on a weekend pass. So I went, and I stayed, and I was there. And in about 3 months, I had a sponsor. And this lady said to me, she said, "Listen, if you're going to maintain this and you're going to stay here, you're going to need to do some work." And she said, "And you're going to need to really be able to work the steps and go through this step work." And so I went home. So at this point, I was living in a room that my mom had paid rent for. Again, building on my recovery capital, right? My mom had paid rent for. And so I went to the room, and I called my mom up, and I said, "Do you know anything about a sponsor?" I'm calling my fucking mom. I don't say anything to anybody in the room. I'm calling my mom to ask her, does she know anything about a sponsor, right? So she said, "Why don't you talk to your sister," who was at that time already in recovery for 3 years. And so I called up my sister, and I said to her, "They're telling me I need a sponsor." She's like, "Okay, I'm going to pick you up. Let's go to a meeting." I'm like, "No, I don't feel like it." She said, "You don't have it like that. Let's go." And that was the way that things happened for me. They just told me what to do, I did it, and here I am, right? So again, becoming. But I had such a hard time with hearing anyone tell me what to do, because I felt like my mom was the strictest mother on the street, because I had to be home and back on the porch before the street lights came on. I couldn't be thinking about it, I couldn't be on my way. If I was not on that porch, then it was a problem. It was a problem. And so she took me to this meeting. I went to the meeting, and she introduced me to a couple of women. And one lady said to me, "I'm your sponsor." I was like, "They told me you have to ask someone to be your sponsor." She's like, "No, I'm it." I'm like, "Okay." So the first thing that happens from that is the fact that I still remember jail, right? Criminal justice, all of that. So I still have an outstanding case. And the first thing that happens is, so she says to me, you need to call me, you need to make sure that you're calling me by this time every night, every day, you need to go to a meeting, I'll pick you up, well, da-da-da-da, the whole thing. And so I go to court during that week, and I find out that I have to go back to jail. So my bond has been rescinded. So I have to go back to Niantic, right? And I let her know, because you're supposed to talk to your sponsor, right? So I let her know, and she's like, okay, that's your first amendment to society. I said, okay, so this sponsor thing is not gonna work for me. I am not about to go with this whole thing, right? And so she explained it to me and went through this whole process. Bottom line, I ended up going back to jail again, right? And this time, I went to jail and I had not been using. And it was a different experience. So I'm in jail. I'm in luck because of the fact that I have a parole violation, so that means that I'm in 23-hour lock and 1 hour out, right? So I'm in jail. I'm trying to get my step book and my big book, and as Bill sees it. That's all I want. Just give me something to read. And they say, no, you can't have any materials. You can't have anything. I got the jumpsuit, right? I got the sneakers. I got a pair of white socks, and that was it. That's all you got. And I had Bob Barker with me, too. You know what I mean? And so that was it. It was me and Bob Barker, and we went in. So I couldn't get my materials. So one of the correction officers came in, and she said, how are you? And I said, I'm fucking pissed off. She said, oh, usually people are when you're here. So now I'm even more pissed off because, are you being smart? And so this lady actually was able to go back and get my literature and bring it to me. And that was really a step toward kind of helping me, again, building my recovery capital, right? Because I'm used to, at that point, I'm still used to just kind of burning bridges. Just cut down everything that you can, don't listen to anything, don't hear anything. So I spent 17 days in jail, go back to court, see Judge Bingham, he modifies my sentence. I then go into probation. I'm on modified probation, I'm on TS, I'm on parole, and I have 3 years suspended after a year, and then I have something like 12 years probation or something like that. It's all in my pardon. And I have all this time for probation. And I meet this probation officer who knew my brother and said to me, what happened to you? I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, what happened to you? You were this shy, nice, educated person. And then the last time I saw you, you were smoking crack. I'm like, that's what happened. I was smoking crack. Shit, I don't know. That's what happened. You know? And so that, you know what I mean? So those were the types of things. So this guy now, again, on my recovery capital, this guy now he's doing the DARE program. So he becomes this person who reaches out to my brother, who my brother then reaches out to an officer, and an officer reaches out to a probation officer, and then they're able to kind of send me materials in and make sure that I get the stuff that I need, and they have me come to the police department to be able to go with them to the DARE programs and to start to go out and talk. So that's, and again, I didn't know any of this stuff because I just learned about recovery capital through CCAR. I didn't know what that shit was, you know what I mean? I just thought people should be doing something for me. And so I do that and I go through that whole process and I finish up with that whole thing and I get a job and I'm working at a hotel. And so within a 90-day period, I work and I just want to kind of go through the fact of how things move really fast. And if I had not been focused, I would have missed what was happening in my life. Easily. But there were so many people doing so many things for me that I could have easily missed it. And every time it got dark, let me just throw this caveat in there. When it got dark, I had to do everything I could not to go outside because everything about me wanted to smoke crack. Period. Just wanted to smoke crack. So I have this whole thing happen, right? And I go in and I got this job at the hotel. And within 3 months, I started off and I was cleaning rooms, and from there I went to front desk, and then I was the night audit. And these guys came in who I run with, right? They called me Maggie Shuffle, Maggie, because I never went to fucking bed. I stayed up and I smoked crack all the time, right? Didn't have a bed, but I never would say that I was homeless because that means that I'm like the rest of the people. And so he comes in and he's rented a room, and now the audits happen overnight, so 11 to 7. So I'm doing an audit. He comes in with his posse and he's headed to his room, and my gut goes crazy because he's the one who's always had the best crack cocaine around. I don't know what to do. I feel like I need to leave and the whole bit. But instead I called my sponsor. And guess what? She came to my job and sat with me for like 3 hours until I got through it. Like my recovery capital, right? Like, and that right there helped me to get through that process. And I think that's when I started to realize that I could get through things. And so I have this job, so this guy is there and the whole bit. And I know that they're selling drugs and doing all this stuff, so I have to report this. And now, so the whole thing about my street mentality, right? Should I snitch? Should I tell somebody what's happening? Should I, I'm going through all of that and the whole bit. So I go and I tell the manager, and long story short, the guy leaves out of there in handcuffs and makes a look at me, right? And I'm like, oh, fuck. You know what I mean? Because I know what that is, because I've lived that. I've lived that. So I go through that whole process and nothing happens, but bottom line is, I get a job. My next job, John hires me, right? At a treatment facility. At a women and children's treatment facility. At this point, I have 2 years sober, and I get a job at a treatment facility. That's why I'm at Sarah, right? And I go through this whole thing and I'm like, okay, I want to do more, I want to be more, and I want to feel like I know what I'm doing. So how do you train? How do you get the science and the art, right, of this whole thing? And I go back to school. And so I'm still in liberation programs 25 years later. I've done every job in liberation except for John's job, right? So I'm still at liberation programs, and I've done that work, and that's what I've done. I've gone back to school, I have like license and things of that sort. And so when I hit my 20-year mark, which was February 2012, March of 2012, I was going to pick up my mom to take her to church, and she didn't feel well. So we ended up in the emergency room. And she's there praying for me and worried about me and saying, you go ahead to church, because she's still praying for me. She's still praying for me. Because when I finished treatment, my mom said to me, every night at 11 o'clock, all I prayed for was that your name would not be called, that they found you dead. I stole my mother's peace of mind for 18 years, over and over and over again. So March 19th, I go to the emergency room with her, and she's still thinking about me. Because love conquers all, right? Ooh, I'm a little snotty. And so, about a month later, she's diagnosed with uterine cancer, right? Stage 4B. Like, I don't even know it's a fucking stage 4B. But I go with her to the doctor, and we're in there, we're talking about the pathology and the whole bit. And I look on this paper, and the only thing I see jump out at me is 4B. They say let them cry, right? Don't stop the tears. Thank you. Fucking Phil, right? So I go back, and we find out that my mom has cancer. I needed every minute and every hour and every day of that 20 years that I had not been using drugs, that I had been working with a sponsor, that I had been going to work, that I had been building recovery capital by using other people, by talking to other people to be able to make it through that. Because I put conditions on my recovery. I'd already said, like around 2 years, I said, I'm telling y'all now, if something happened to my fucking mother, I'm not telling telling you I'm not going to lose. I'm not going to say that. I go to a meeting, this lady is sitting up there, and she says, be careful about putting conditions on your recovery. What the fuck? And so, through the building of the Recovery Capital, through the working through the program, through the prayers, through the faith, through all of the work that my mom did, through my work at my job, right, I was able to take 6 months off and hold my mother's hand. And when my mother, people like to say transition, when my mother died, right, I was sitting right next to her holding her hand, and her fingertips got cold. And so I had gone to court with my niece at that day. And my niece, my brother, and I went back there. And we got back to the hospital. She was already in hospice. And I'm so grateful that I was able to be there. But that's because of the fact of the work that happened through my pathway of recovery. That's all because of that. Because if I hadn't fucking gotten arrested, if I hadn't used a sponsor, if I hadn't stopped smoking crack, I wouldn't have been there. Because when my brother died, I was in the crack house. They called me up. We still had payphones then, right? They called me up and they said, Maggie, your brother just got shot on the highway. I was like, all right. And I intended to go. You know what I mean? I intended to go. But somebody gave me a fucking hit. I couldn't separate from it. I couldn't do it. And so we got back to the hospital. That was pretty good, huh? We went right back to it. Yeah. We got back to the hospital, right? And it was 2:10. My mother looked at, so I'm standing on her right, my brother's standing at the foot of her bed, and my niece is on the left. And my mother looked at me, looked at my niece, and looked at my brother, and looked at my niece. And she took her last breath at 2:13. And I tell you, I never thought I could be grateful for my mom's death. But what my sponsor had taught me was, we're the people who sit back, and because of the fact that we don't want to let people go, we want them to stay, so they hold on because they're not sure we're going to be okay. 2 days before that, I had gotten all the kids in the family and brought them to the hospital so that she could see, and I think everybody gave her permission to go on. And she passed. And so I never had, not once, and this shocks me, it still shocks me today, I've never had this, like, oh my God, I wish I had. I wish I could have. I was able to take and turn back what she had been doing for me to do for her for 6 months. And it's still today, it's her prayer, and it's her presence, and I know she's right here saying, go ahead, girl. Right? And it's through that whole thing. And so the family and the connection and the prayer and the loved ones, because I really thought that if I would just run away and mom wouldn't see me, when she would go up the hill to go to the grocery store, I would hide. I figured I wasn't doing anything to harm her, because I wasn't stealing from her in her house, but I was stealing her joy. I was stealing her joy. And when I heard somebody say that, I was like, oh shit. And so there was a Scottish proverb said something about, everybody knew about it, was talking about my drinking and drugging, but nobody knew about it, was talking about my thirst. Like, that takes a minute, right? And that's now, my thirst is in recovery, is grounded in what I do, is grounded in the work here. I'm a board member at CCAR. And when I think about my life and my path, and the fact that I get to, like, be labeled as a board member, did you guys hear Mike introduce me? I'm like, who the fuck is he talking about? You know what I mean? So the thing is that, so my path of becoming, again, it started with the criminal justice system. I have not been arrested since 1992. I haven't stolen anything but a pen since 1992. Right? I still have to go back and return people's pens, and I'm like, here you go. You know what I mean? Because if it's smooth and it's medium and it writes good, somehow it just kind of ends up in my hand. So, you know what I mean? So some I take back, some I don't. And so I show up for work, and I do what it is that's expected of me in work. As Mike said, I sponsor women, but I also have a sponsor. Right? Because they say, if you don't have a sponsor, you got a fool for a sponsor, and you're sponsoring yourself. Right? So I believe in the program, I believe in the path of recovery, I believe in this whole process. And there's a couple of things that I really wanted to say. And one really has to do with the fact of how I actually work through the 12 steps of the program. And I'm not stuck in any place. Mark said this morning, what did he say? He's something steppers, like, you know what I mean? He does AA, NA, whatever. I do whatever is going to build my capital, right? But I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and that's where I kind of go and attend and things of that sort. But then there is me, and there's my recovery, and there is my title and what that means in my work. And so every day that I go to work, that I'm able to touch somebody's life, and someone calls me up, or I see someone like Herbert who comes over and says, I couldn't wait to see you. This is his first time coming here. I haven't seen him for years. But I remember him. Sarah called me up and said to me, guess what? I'm going to the conference. I get to hear you speak. I'm like, okay. You know what I mean? But it's just the whole thing around touching someone's life. And, my sponsor had said to me, she said, listen, she said, success is measured by the number of people's lives you touch. Bill White, where are you? Chasing the Dragon, right? So listen, so I grew up on that book. Through my trainings and everything was really through that. But I smoked crack, and it was called Chasing the Dragon too. You know what I mean? Like we would mix the cocaine with the heroin, and that was Chasing the Dragon. But I grew up through my academics with Chasing the Dragon. And so when Bill had said, so I've been to 3 of the 4 conferences. 1 in Connecticut and 2 here. And so when Bill had said, we're going to Bill, I was like, oh, that's very cool. To like build a conference around so we can make sure that Bill is in the room, right? A legend in our field in doing this work. And someone that I get to... Someone I get to take a picture of and say, listen, I really was there. So when I got into the program, when I finally stopped going to jail and stopped getting arrested, because I had those convictions, but I was always in jail. So I was either in jail, on my way out of jail, or on my way in jail. There was no other place. Those were the 3 options. It was one or the other. And so when my sponsor had said to me, so I had a sponsor who I had for 7 years, and she died. And when she was on her deathbed, she said to me, she said, listen, she said, dear, she was this little white, very quiet, very spiritual, like just the opposite of me. Whatever, you know what I mean? And like I was like, nah, I'm not sure I want to get so much like you, because I don't really want to be that spiritual where I can't cuss. You know what I mean? I want to be able to, like, every now and then, like, do have fun, right? And she said to me, she said, my process is preparing you for your process. I had no idea what she was talking about. But now I know. Now I know. And so she told me, she said, listen, she said, I want you to keep in mind the steps are in order for a reason. The first 3, you just show up, right? The next 3, you clean up. The next 3, you make up. And the last ones, you keep up. She said, and here's how you check to see how you're doing. She said, when someone asks you to do something of service, and not just in the rooms, right? Not just in the rooms. She would say to me, don't get caught doing something nice. Do something nice and don't get caught. Open the door for someone. She would say to me, smile, because it confuses people, right? So I do a lot of that. I do a lot of smiling. I love laughter. I love hugs. You know what I mean? Like the energy in this room, like this. I could be here like for 2 weeks, just kind of just receiving, you know? And so she said, that's the way the steps are set. She said, but pay attention to what's happening. When you start to say no, that's your 12th step, it's out the window. In 11, when you lose your belief and you start with that whole thing of like really like making sure that you're always trying to increase in your spirituality, you've lost 11. When you stop looking at yourself every night to see how many pens you stole, you're losing that. When you refuse to make amends, and she said to me, listen, the amend thing, right? I had some difficulty with the financial part of it. And she said to me, if you owe an amend, a financial amend, and you're spending money, you're spending somebody else's money. You need to take care of that. I was like, I'm still working with that one. Right? So then she said, and then in 8, I start to point the finger and talk about you, not me. Right? So I'm not doing that. In 7, I'm not doing something I should be doing. In 6, I'm doing something I should not be doing. In 5, I'm talking to myself and nobody else. In 4, again, I'm looking at it and I'm saying ways as to why it is that I'm right and you're wrong. I become willful in 3. I show that I have no relief and I go crazy. And the next thing that's left is for me to drink a drug. So I just want to say that in my becoming, in my process of my life, I'm always looking to see ways that I could actually help somebody else, because the opposite of addiction is what, John? Connection. It's not recovery, it's connection. And so this is all about connection. We're all connected here. I'm so grateful to be here. Phil, thank you again, and have a good day.
Maggie Young!
Thank you, Maggie. So, we are about to dismiss you. Where's Amy? Is Amy in the room? I don't know, do I have any announcements you want me to make?